A gunshot rang through the dusty streets of Rhyolite, Nevada, making Lily Rose flinch as she scrubbed another glass clean behind the saloon bar. The year was 1876, and she had been counting days like prisoners count notches on their cell walls, 8 months of servitude to a debt that seemed to grow rather than diminish. The evening crowd at the Silver Dollar Saloon was beginning to filter in as the sun dipped below the western mountains, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks that Lily could only glimpse through the grimy windows. Men with dirt-caked boots and weather-worn faces pushed through the swinging doors, their eyes immediately scanning the room for whiskey, cards, and women. Lily kept her gaze down, focusing on her tasks rather than meeting their hungry stares. "Girl." "More whiskey at table 3, barked Jasper Wilcox, the saloon owner whose thick, greasy fingers were always counting money or finding their way onto Lily's shoulder. His touch made her skin crawl, but she'd learned to hide her revulsion behind a mask of subservient efficiency. "Yes, Mr. Wilcox," she replied, reaching for the bottle of rotgut that passed for quality spirits in this establishment. The debt had started simply enough. When her father died of consumption last winter, leaving her alone at 22 with a small ranch she couldn't manage and debts she hadn't known existed, Wilcox had appeared like a vulture circling dying prey. He'd offered to buy the ranch for a fraction of its worth. When she'd refused, he'd revealed the promissory notes her father had signed during a year of bad harvests and worse gambling decisions. "You owe me $800, Miss Rose," he declared with a smile that never reached his eyes. "But I'm a reasonable man. Work for me until it's paid and we'll call it square." She'd had no choice. The alternative was debtor's prison or worse. So she'd agreed, not understanding that Wilcox had designed a system where her debt would never diminish, charging her for room and board at exorbitant rates, claiming damages and shortages from her pay, adding interest that multiplied faster than she could count. As Lily carried the whiskey bottle to table 3, a hush fell over the saloon. The swinging doors had opened to admit a stranger not unusual in itself, but something about this man commanded attention. He was tall, his broad shoulders filling out a dust-covered duster coat that had seen better days. Beneath a wide-brimmed black hat, his face was partly obscured by several days' growth of beard, but his eyes were clear and alert, scanning the room with the wariness of a man accustomed to trouble. He moved with the easy grace of someone comfortable in his own skin, despite the visible weight of the gun holstered at his hip. He wasn't flashy like some of the gunslingers who passed through, showing off fancy shooting or trying to build a reputation. This man had nothing to prove. "Whiskey," he said as he approached the bar, his voice low and graveled as though he didn't use it much. Lily nodded and hurried to serve him after delivering the bottle to the card players at table 3. As she poured his drink, she noticed his hands strong and calloused but clean, the nails trimmed short. Not the hands of a man who avoided honest work. "You new to Rhyolite?" she asked, the standard greeting for strangers. He lifted his glass, taking a measured sip before answering. "Passing through. Name's Owen Locke." "Lily Rose," she replied automatically, then tensed as Wilcox appeared behind her, his meaty hand coming to rest on the small of her back. "This girl's got work to do, mister," Wilcox said, his tone falsely jovial. "She ain't paid to chat with the customers." His fingers dug into her back, and Lily stepped away, moving to clear glasses from a recently vacated table. From the corner of her eye, she watched Owen Locke observe this interaction, his expression impassive but his eyes missing nothing. He finished his whiskey in one swallow, set the glass down with a soft clink, and dropped a coin beside it more than the drink was worth. "Another time," he said, nodding slightly in her direction before turning and walking out, his spurs making a soft jingling sound with each step. Lily thought that would be the end of it. Men passed through Rhyolite constantly, drawn by rumors of silver strikes or running from troubles elsewhere. Few stayed long enough to become more than a fleeting memory. But Owen Locke returned the next evening and the next. He never drank more than one whiskey, always paid too much, and watched the room with those observant eyes. He rarely spoke to anyone, but when he did, it was with a direct courtesy that set him apart from most of the saloon's patrons. On the fourth night, as a sudden desert storm lashed the town with rare, violent rain, the saloon was nearly empty. Wilcox had retreated to his office to count the day's earnings, leaving Lily to mind the bar. Owen Locke entered, rain dripping from his coat and hat, which he removed and hung on a peg by the door. "Quiet night," he commented as he took his usual spot at the bar. Lily poured his whiskey without being asked. "The rain keeps most men home, or sends them to Madame Renault's." She nodded toward the establishment across the street that offered entertainments the Silver Dollar didn't. He nodded, taking his time with the whiskey. "How long have you been working here?" The question was asked casually, but Lily felt a flicker of caution. Personal questions from men usually led nowhere good, but something about Owen Locke's steady gaze made her answer honestly. 8 months, since my father died. And before that, we had a small ranch outside town. Nothing special, but it was ours. She paused, wondering why she was telling him this, or I thought it was. Owen's eyes narrowed slightly. "Debt," she nodded, busying herself with wiping down the already clean bar. "My father wasn't good with money or cards, and Wilcox holds the note. It wasn't a question." "Yes." She glanced toward the office door, lowering her voice. $800 originally, but somehow I still owe nearly $700, despite working every day for 8 months. Owen's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Creative bookkeeping. That's one way to put it. He finished his drink and placed another oversized payment on the bar. "Thank you, Miss Rose." As he stood to leave, the office door opened and Wilcox emerged, his eyes narrowing at the sight of them talking. "Lily, get those tables clean before closing," he barked. She moved quickly to comply, feeling Wilcox's eyes on her back. When she looked up again, Owen Locke was gone, disappeared into the storm-drenched night. The next day dawned clear, the desert air washed clean by the rain. Lily rose early as always, completing her chores in the small room above the saloon that Wilcox counted as part of her payment. She had few possessions: a worn dress for Sundays, a hairbrush that had belonged to her mother, and a small book of poetry her father had given her years ago, before the drink took hold of him. When she descended to help prepare for the day, she found Wilcox in a foul mood, barking orders and complaining about every task. By midday, as the regular drinkers began to filter in for their daily escape from the heat and dust, his temper had not improved. "Girl," he called as she served a table. "Get back here. Got something to discuss." Heart sinking, Lily followed him to his office, a small room behind the bar filled with the acrid smell of his cigars and the musty odor of ledger books. "Shut the door," he ordered, settling his bulk behind the desk. Lily obeyed but remained standing near the door, maintaining as much distance as possible. Wilcox pulled out a ledger, flipping it open with theatrical flourish. "Been reviewing your account, Lily. Seems things ain't looking good." "Sir?" Her throat tightened with dread. "Interest is piling up. And you broke 2 glasses last week. Plus your board's gone up, food prices, you understand." His smile was like a knife slash across his face. "You're falling behind." "But I've been working double shifts for months," she protested. "How could I possibly owe more?" His expression hardened. You questioning my figures, girl. Maybe you'd prefer I take the debt to the sheriff. See how you like working off what you owe in the territorial prison. Lily swallowed her retort, knowing it would only make things worse. No, sir. Good. He leaned back, his chair creaking under his weight. Now, there is a way you could work it off faster. The way his eyes traveled over her body made his meaning perfectly clear. It wasn't the first time he'd made such an insinuation, but he'd never been quite so direct before. The other girls make good money upstairs, he continued. 3, maybe 4 months and your debt would be cleared. Something to think about. Bile rose in Lily's throat. The other girls were the saloon's prostitutes, women who entertained men in the rooms upstairs for money that mostly went into Wilcox's pockets. I'll keep working the bar, sir, she said, her voice barely steady. If you'll excuse me, there are customers waiting. His face darkened. Don't play high and mighty with me, Lily rose. You ain't got many options left. Think on it. I won't be this generous forever. She escaped the office, hands trembling as she returned to her duties. The threat wasn't idle. She'd seen how Wilcox treated girls who refused him too many times. Suddenly, their debts became insurmountable. Or they were accused of stealing, ending up in situations far worse than the one they'd tried to avoid. The day dragged on endlessly. Each time the saloon doors opened, Lily found herself looking up, hoping to see Owen Locke's tall figure. She couldn't have said why his presence would be any comfort. He was just another drifter. After all, but something about his quiet dignity made the saloon feel less sordid when he was there. But he didn't come. As evening fell and the saloon filled with its usual crowd of miners, cowboys, and local troublemakers, Lily moved through her duties mechanically. The weight of Wilcox's threat hung over her like a storm cloud. She knew what would happen, had seen it before with other girls. First would come more accounting errors, then increased pressure, and finally an ultimatum. Work upstairs or face the consequences. Just before midnight, when the noise and smoke had reached their peak and Lily's feet ached from hours of standing, the doors swung open to admit Owen Locke. Relief flooded through her, so intense it was almost painful. He looked different tonight, cleaned up, his face freshly shaved, wearing a shirt that, while simple, was clearly new. He made his way to the bar, nodding to her as he took his usual spot. "Evening, Miss Rose, Mr. Locke." She poured his whiskey without being asked. "Thought you might have moved on. Had some business to attend to." His eyes tracked Wilcox, who was engaged in a loud conversation with some miners at the far end of the room. "Difficult day," she hesitated, then gave a small nod. "You could say that." "Might get better." He sipped his whiskey, then set it down deliberately. "Where's Wilcox keep his office?" The question startled her. "Behind the bar." "Why?" Instead of answering, he reached inside his coat and produced an envelope, sliding it across to her. "Hold on to this. Don't open it yet." Before she could question him further, he stood and walked purposefully toward Wilcox, who looked up with irritation at the interruption. "Need a word," Owen said, his voice carrying just enough to be heard over the saloon noise without shouting. "Private-like." Wilcox scowled but eventually heaved himself to his feet. "This better be worth my time, stranger." Lily watched as they disappeared into the office, her heart beating frantically against her ribs. The envelope felt heavy in her apron pocket. What was Owen Locke doing? He barely knew her, and whatever business he had with Wilcox couldn't possibly involve her debt. Could it? 5 minutes passed. Then 10. The bartender, a surly man named Frank who mostly ignored Lily except to bark orders, gestured impatiently for her to serve waiting customers. She moved automatically, pouring drinks and collecting coins, but her attention remained fixed on the closed office door. When it finally opened, Wilcox emerged first, his face flushed with an emotion Lily couldn't quite identify, anger, perhaps, or frustration. But there was something else, too. He crossed directly to her, grabbing her arm with bruising force. "Office." "Now," he growled, pulling her along before she could protest. Inside the small room, Owen Locke stood calmly by the desk, watching their entrance with those steady eyes. Wilcox released her arm, shoving her forward. "Tell her," he spat at Owen. "Tell her what you've done, you interfering bastard." Owen's expression remained impassive as he addressed Lily. "I've purchased your debt, Miss Rose." The words seemed to echo in the small room. Lily stared at him, uncomprehending. "What, your debt?" "It's been transferred to me." He indicated a stack of papers on the desk. "All legal and proper. Mr. Wilcox has been paid in full." Wilcox made a disgusted sound. "Paid too much, if you ask me. Girl ain't worth $800. $700, Owen corrected mildly. "According to your own ledger." "Whatever. She's your problem now." Wilcox's gaze shifted to Lily, ugly with spite. "You think you're lucky, girl. Wait till you see what he wants for his money. Men don't pay debts for nothing." Owen's voice hardened for the first time since Lily had met him. "That's enough, Wilcox." The saloon owner sneered but fell silent. "Miss Rose," Owen continued, his tone gentling again, "you have a choice to make. You can continue working here to pay off your debt to me, or you can walk out those doors right now. The debt will be considered cleared." Lily looked between the two men, confusion and disbelief warring within her. "I don't understand." "It's simple," Owen said. "You're free to go, no strings attached, like hell," Wilcox muttered. "No man's that stupid with money." Owen ignored him, keeping his focus on Lily. "The envelope I gave you contains train tickets to Sacramento and enough money to get you settled. Use it or don't, your choice." "Why?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "Why would you do this for a stranger?" Something flickered in Owen's eyes, pain, perhaps, or memory. "Let's just say I've seen what debt can do to good people. I can afford to help, that's all." Wilcox made another disgusted noise. "Touching. Now if this little drama is finished, I've got a business to run. Lily, get your things and get out. You don't work here anymore." Lily stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. Freedom, the thing she'd dreamed of for months, was suddenly being handed to her. But nothing in life came without a price. What did Owen Locke really want? As if reading her thoughts, Owen spoke again. "Miss Rose, I give you my word. This is not a trick or a trap. I expect nothing from you. Take the tickets, go to Sacramento, start fresh, or stay in Rhyolite if you prefer, just not under Wilcox's thumb." There was something in his voice, a sincerity that cut through her doubts. And what choice did she really have? Stay and eventually succumb to Wilcox's pressure, or trust this stranger who had, for whatever reason, offered her an escape? "I'll go," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll get my things." Wilcox's face contorted with anger. "Fine. You've got 10 minutes to clear out. Then I never want to see your ungrateful face again." Lily hurried upstairs to her small room, her mind spinning. She pulled her few possessions together, the dress, the hairbrush, the book, and wrapped them in a shawl. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely tie the bundle. Was this really happening? Or would she walk downstairs to find it had all been some cruel joke? But when she descended, Owen Locke was waiting by the bar, his calm presence a stark contrast to the chaos of emotions inside her. Wilcox was nowhere to be seen. "Ready?" Owen asked simply. Lily nodded, clutching her small bundle to her chest. The envelope was still in her pocket, its weight both reassuring and terrifying. Owen gestured to the door. "After you." The night air hit her face as she stepped onto the boardwalk, cool and clean after the smoky interior of the saloon. Stars blazed overhead in the clear desert sky, more stars than she'd noticed in months. Had she truly not looked up in all that time? Owen stood beside her, a respectful distance away. "The train leaves at noon tomorrow," he said. "I've arranged a room for you at the hotel for tonight. Mrs. Benson is expecting you. She's a good woman. You'll be safe there." Lily turned to face him, finding her voice at last. "I don't understand any of this. Why me? Why now?" He hesitated, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I've been watching Wilcox since I arrived in town. He's done this before, trapping people in debt they can never escape. It's a special kind of evil, using the law to enslave people." His jaw tightened. "My sister was caught in something similar years back. Didn't end well. When I saw you behind that bar looking like a bird in a cage." He shook his head. "Some wrongs you can't right, but sometimes you get a chance to prevent the same wrong happening again." It was more words than she'd heard him speak at once, and they rang with a truth that settled something within her. Still, doubt lingered. "And you want nothing in return? Nothing at all?" His eyes, shadowed under the brim of his hat, met her steadily. "Nothing, Miss Rose. Though I would consider it a kindness if you'd let me walk you to the hotel. Rhyolite after dark isn't always safe for a lady alone." A laugh escaped her, small and slightly hysterical. "A lady? I haven't felt like one in a very long time." "Well, you are one," he said simply. "Shall we?" They walked side by side down the moonlit street, past the darkened storefronts and the still rowdy saloons. Lily was acutely aware of his presence beside her, not looming or possessive like so many men, but solid and reassuring. For the first time in 8 months, she felt safe. The hotel was a modest 2-story building, one of the few in Rhyolite built of actual lumber rather than adobe or canvas. Inside, a plump, gray-haired woman looked up from her desk. "Mrs. Benson," Owen greeted her with a nod. "This is Miss Rose." "Ah, yes." The woman's eyes were kind but shrewd as she assessed Lily. "We've got a nice room ready for you, dear. Hot water for washing too, if you'd like." "Thank you," Lily managed, still feeling as though she might wake from this dream at any moment. "I'll leave you here," Owen said. "The hotel serves breakfast at 7. Train station's 2 blocks west. You can't miss it." Lily turned to him, suddenly reluctant to let him go. "Mr. Locke, Owen, I don't know how to thank you." "Live free," he said simply. "That's thanks enough." He touched the brim of his hat in a gesture of respect, turned and walked out into the night. Mrs. Benson clucked sympathetically. "Come along, dear. You look dead on your feet. Everything will seem clearer after a good night's rest." The room was small but clean, with a real bed that felt like impossible luxury after the thin pallet in her room above the saloon. Lily sat on the edge of it, finally opening the envelope Owen had given her. Inside were 2 train tickets to Sacramento, one departing at noon tomorrow, and one for the following day, along with a stack of bills that made her gasp. $300, more money than she'd seen at once in her entire life. Also in the envelope was a folded note in a neat, masculine hand. "Miss Rose, your future is your own now. The second ticket is if you decide to wait a day. I'll be on that train, headed to California myself, but please don't feel obligated to wait on my account. This is your chance for a new beginning, however you choose to take it. Respectfully, O. Locke." Lily read the note 3 times, her thoughts in turmoil. Freedom was hers for the taking, immediate freedom, on the noon train. So why did the second ticket call to her so strongly? She barely slept that night, her mind racing with possibilities she hadn't allowed herself to consider for months. By morning, exhaustion and excitement had combined into a strange, nervous energy. She washed with the hot water Mrs. Benson had promised, put on her one good dress, and went down to breakfast. The dining room was nearly empty at that early hour. Mrs. Benson herself brought Lily a plate of eggs and bacon, along with coffee that smelled better than anything served at the saloon. "Mr. Locke paid for your meals too," the older woman said, settling herself in the chair across from Lily. "He's a good man, that one. Known him since he was a boy." Lily looked up in surprise. "You know him?" Mrs. Benson nodded. "His family had a ranch near Carson City when I lived there. Lost it all in '63. Bank called in loans after the crash. His pa couldn't take the shame, shot himself. Owen couldn't have been more than 16, but he took his ma and sister and headed out. Heard later he'd found work with the Pony Express, then the railroad." She sipped her own coffee. "Didn't see him again till he showed up here 3 years back, all grown up and doing well for himself. He's got mining interests up north now, nothing huge, but steady. Comes through every few months." Lily absorbed this information, fitting it with the pieces Owen had already shared. "He mentioned his sister." Mrs. Benson's face grew somber. "Sad business, that. Pretty girl, not much older than you. After their ma died, she ended up working for a man in Virginia City who kept her in debt, just like." She trailed off, looking uncomfortable. "Just like Wilcox did with me," Lily finished quietly. "Yes, well, by the time Owen found out how bad it was, she was already sick. Consumption, they said, but truth is, she'd lost the will to live. He got her out, but it was too late." Mrs. Benson patted Lily's hand. "That's why he helped you, I expect. Couldn't save her, but he could save you." The story settled over Lily like a weight. Owen's actions made more sense now, not charity or some hidden agenda, but a very personal mission born of loss and regret. "Did he say anything to you this morning?" Lily asked. "About his plans," Mrs. Benson shook her head. "Haven't seen him since yesterday. Man keeps his own counsel, always has." She stood, gathering Lily's empty plate. "Train's at noon if you're going, though if you're smart you'll wait for tomorrow." "Why do you say that?" Lily asked, startled by the woman's directness. Mrs. Benson gave her a knowing look. "Because Owen Locke is the kind of man who comes along once in a lifetime, if you're lucky. And he's looked at you in a way I haven't seen him look at anyone since before his sister died." With that pronouncement, she bustled off to the kitchen, leaving Lily with her thoughts. The morning passed in a strange limbo. Lily walked through the town, seeing it with new eyes now that she was no longer trapped. Rhyolite wasn't much, a dusty collection of buildings strung along a main street, with scattered dwellings spreading out toward the surrounding hills, but it had been her home her entire life. The thought of leaving brought both excitement and terror. At 11 o'clock, she found herself at the train station, watching the locomotive being readied for departure. Passengers were already gathering, families saying goodbyes, men in business suits checking watches impatiently. A new life waited just hours away. But Owen Locke wouldn't be on this train. Lily fingered the tickets in her pocket, thinking of his note. "Your future is your own now." For the first time in nearly a year, that was true. She could choose. At 11:30, she turned and walked back toward the hotel, her decision made. The day stretched endlessly before her once she had decided to wait. She spent part of it writing a letter to Sacramento, enclosing some of the money Owen had given her with instructions to hold it for her arrival. If she was starting a new life, she would do it with forethought and care. She didn't see Owen all day and found herself both relieved and disappointed. What would she say to him? How could she explain a decision she barely understood herself? That evening, there was a knock at her door. When she opened it, Owen stood there, hat in hand, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "Miss Rose," he said, "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all," she replied, suddenly conscious of her simple dress and loose hair. "Please come in." He hesitated. "Perhaps the lobby would be more appropriate. I wouldn't want to compromise your reputation." The concern touched her deeply after months of working in a place where her reputation was assumed to be already compromised. Of course, she said, stepping into the hallway and closing the door behind her. They descended to the lobby, finding it empty except for Mrs. Benson, who took one look at them and discreetly disappeared into the back office. I noticed you didn't take the noon train, Owen said as they settled into chairs near the unlit fireplace. No, Lily agreed. I decided to wait. May I ask why? She considered how to answer, finally settling on honesty. I've spent the last 8 months with my future decided for me. When you gave me a choice, I realized I wanted to make it carefully. She met his eyes. And I wanted to thank you properly, not just rush away. He nodded, accepting this. No thanks needed, but I'm glad you're being deliberate about your next steps. He paused. Do you have plans for Sacramento? The beginnings of one. I wrote to a boarding house there today, a respectable one, to arrange accommodation, and I'll look for work, proper work. Good. It's a growing city, lots of opportunities. He seemed about to say more, then stopped himself. An awkward silence fell between them. Lily gathered her courage. Mrs. Benson told me about your sister, she said softly. I'm so sorry. Pain flickered across his face before he composed himself. Sarah was a bright spirit, didn't deserve what happened to her. He looked down at his hands. When I saw you in that saloon, I saw her ghost. Couldn't walk away this time. You saved me, Lily said simply. Not just from Wilcox, but from what I might have become if I'd stayed. He looked up, his eyes intense. You would have survived, Miss Rose. I recognized that in you right away. You have steel in your spine. But survival isn't the same as living. The truth of his words resonated within her. She had been surviving, nothing more, for too long. Will you tell me about your plans? She asked. Mrs. Benson mentioned mining interests. He nodded, seeming relieved at the change of subject. Small silver mine near Sonora. Nothing fancy, but it turns a profit. I've been looking to expand, maybe buy some land too. Is that why you're going to Sacramento? Partly. There's a banker there who's interested in investing. And I have some personal business to attend to. He hesitated, then added, I grew up on a ranch. Miss the open spaces sometimes. Mining's lucrative, but it's not the same as working the land. They talked for over an hour, the initial awkwardness giving way to a comfortable exchange. Owen spoke more than Lily had heard him speak in all their previous encounters combined, telling her about his childhood in Nevada, his time with the Pony Express, the years spent building his mining operation. In turn, she shared stories of growing up on her father's small ranch, the happy years before her mother's death, her dreams of someday having a place of her own again. When they finally parted for the night, Lily felt as though she'd glimpsed the man behind the quiet exterior, a man of principle and determination, shaped by loss but not broken by it. The train leaves at 10 tomorrow, Owen said as they stood at the foot of the stairs. I'll be there regardless of your decision, no pressure either way. I'll be there, Lily said without hesitation. I've made my choice. His smile, rare and genuine, warmed something deep inside her. Good night then, Miss Rose, until tomorrow. Good night, Mr. Locke. She slept deeply that night, more peacefully than she had in months. When morning came, she packed her few belongings, adding a nightgown and toiletries Mrs. Benson had kindly provided. The older woman refused payment, insisting they were gifts. You just write when you get settled, she said, embracing Lily warmly. And tell that stubborn man to bring you back for a visit sometime. Rhyolite's not all bad memories, you know. I will, Lily promised, touched by the unexpected friendship. At the train station, Owen was waiting, his own luggage a single well-worn valise at his feet. He straightened when he saw her, something like relief crossing his features. Ready? He asked simply. Yes, she replied, feeling the truth of it in her bones. As the train pulled away from Rhyolite, Lily watched the town recede from the window. a strange mixture of emotions washing over her. 8 months of her life had been spent in servitude there. Yet as the buildings grew smaller and the desert stretched out around them, she felt not only relief but a curious gratitude. Had she not been trapped by Wilcox, had Owen not walked into that saloon, she wouldn't be here now on the verge of a new beginning. She turned from the window to find Owen watching her, his expression thoughtful. "No regrets?" he asked. "None," she said firmly. "Only forward now." He nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Only forward. The journey to Sacramento would take 2 days, with an overnight stop in Reno. They settled into the rhythm of travel, watching the landscape change from desert to the beginnings of the Sierra Nevada foothills. They spoke easily now, the initial barriers between them dissolving with each mile that separated them from Rhyolite. In Reno, Owen secured them separate rooms at a respectable hotel near the station. After a dinner in the hotel restaurant, where Owen entertained her with stories of his more colorful mining ventures, they took a short walk through the town, which bustled with energy even in the evening hours. "It's so different from Rhyolite," Lily observed, taking in the brick buildings and gaslit streets. "More permanent somehow." "Mining towns come and go with the strikes," Owen replied. "Places like this, built on trade and farming as much as mineral wealth, they last." They paused at a small park, where a band was playing for a handful of evening strollers. The music, a simple waltz, drifted through the cool air. "May I?" Owen asked, gesturing toward the improvised dance area where several couples were already moving to the music. Lily hesitated only briefly before nodding. "I'm afraid I'm out of practice." "So am I," he admitted with a smile. "We can be clumsy together." But they weren't clumsy at all. Owen led with a quiet confidence, his hand respectful at her waist, and Lily followed naturally, remembering steps her mother had taught her years ago. They moved together as if they'd danced 100 times before, finding a harmony that seemed to extend beyond the music. As they turned beneath the stars, Lily caught a glimpse of Owen's face open, unguarded, with a warmth she'd never seen there before. Something shifted between them in that moment, a recognition of possibilities neither had allowed themselves to consider until now. When the music ended, they stood for a moment, still connected, before Owen gently stepped back. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" Lily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "For the dance. For waiting for the second train. For trusting me when you had every reason not to trust anyone." The sincerity in his voice touched her deeply. "You earned that trust, Owen. Not many would have done what you did." They walked back to the hotel in comfortable silence, both aware that something fundamental had changed, though neither quite ready to name it. The next morning, they boarded the train for the final leg to Sacramento. The Sierra Nevadas rose majestically around them as they climbed, the train laboring up steep grades and winding through magnificent forests. Lily, who had never traveled beyond Nevada, pressed her face to the window like an excited child, drinking in the spectacular views. "It's like something from a storybook," she breathed as they passed a crystal-clear mountain lake. "I never imagined such beauty existed so close to home." Owen watched her with evident pleasure. "Wait until you see the valley from the western slopes. It's like the whole world opens up before you." By late afternoon, they had crossed the mountains and begun their descent toward Sacramento. As Owen had promised, the view was breathtaking, the vast Central Valley stretching to the horizon, the American and Sacramento rivers winding through fertile farmlands, the city itself a collection of buildings nestled at the confluence. "It's wonderful," Lily said, a mixture of excitement and nervousness building within her. This would be her home now, this unknown city in this unfamiliar landscape. As if sensing her thoughts, Owen spoke quietly. "It can be overwhelming at first, but you'll find your place here. And you?" she asked, suddenly realizing they hadn't discussed what would happen after they arrived. "Will you stay in Sacramento long?" "A few days at least," he replied. "I have meetings with the banker I mentioned and some other business to attend to." He hesitated, then added, "I'd be honored to help you get settled if you'd allow it. Show you the city, make sure you're comfortable with your boarding house." Relief flooded through her. "I'd like that very much." The train pulled into Sacramento as evening fell, the station busy with travelers and those meeting them. Owen helped Lily with her small bag, then guided her through the crowd to where carriages waited for hire. "The address for your boarding house?" he asked. She showed him the letter she'd received in response to her inquiry, a prompt reply from the proprietress, Mrs. Alina Harrington, confirming a room was available. Owen nodded approvingly. "Good location. Respectable neighborhood not far from the Capitol building." The carriage took them through streets lit by gas lamps, past impressive buildings of brick and stone interspersed with more modest wooden structures. Sacramento was clearly a city of importance, with the solidity of a place built to last. The boarding house was a handsome three-story Victorian, its yellow paint gleaming in the lamplight. Owen paid the driver, then carried Lily's bag up the steps to the front door. A brass knocker shaped like a lion's head announced their arrival. Mrs. Harrington herself answered, a tall, dignified woman in her 50s with silver-streaked dark hair and a no-nonsense expression that softened as she took in her visitors. "Miss Rose, I presume," she said, her voice cultured but warm. "And your husband?" Lily flushed. "Oh, no, Mr. Locke is a friend who kindly escorted me from Nevada. I'm traveling alone, as I mentioned in my letter." If Mrs. Harrington was surprised, she didn't show it. "I see. Well, you're most welcome, Miss Rose. And Mr. Locke, thank you for seeing the young lady safely to my door." "My pleasure," Owen replied. "Miss Rose has secured employment in the city and was seeking suitable accommodation." This was a small fiction they had agreed upon. Lily hadn't actually secured a position yet, but Owen had insisted that presenting herself as already employed would make finding lodging easier. "Well, she's found it," Mrs. Harrington said firmly. "I run a respectable house for working ladies. No gentlemen callers past 8 in the evening, breakfast served at 7 sharp, dinner at 6 for those who take their meals here. Sunday dinner is included in the weekly rate. Other meals are additional but very reasonable." She ushered them into a neat parlor while she fetched the key to Lily's room. Owen remained standing, hat in hand, clearly intending to depart now that he'd seen her safely delivered. "I'm staying at the Golden Eagle Hotel," he said quietly. "May I call on you tomorrow? Perhaps show you some of the city?" "I'd like that," Lily replied, suddenly reluctant to see him go. Mrs. Harrington returned with the key. "Third floor front, Miss Rose. Lovely view of the street and excellent morning light." Owen took his leave then, with a promise to return at 10 the next morning. As the door closed behind him, Lily felt a momentary panic. She was truly on her own now, in a strange city with nothing but the money in her pocket and her few possessions. Mrs. Harrington seemed to sense her unease. "The first night is always the hardest, my dear," she said kindly. "But you'll find your feet quickly enough. Sacramento is a good city for a fresh start. I should know. I made mine here 20 years ago." The room was small but charming, with a narrow bed, a dresser, a washstand, and a chair by the window. Clean curtains framed the view of the street below, and a small vase of fresh flowers sat on the dresser, a welcoming touch Lily hadn't expected. After unpacking her few belongings, she sat on the edge of the bed, overcome by the events of the past 3 days. From trapped and desperate to free and full of possibility, The transformation seemed almost too much to absorb. And then there was Owen. What was growing between them was undeniable, but also complicated. He had rescued her, paid her debt, brought her to safety. How could she separate gratitude from deeper feelings? Did he wonder the same thing? Despite her racing thoughts, exhaustion soon claimed her, and she slept deeply in the unfamiliar bed. Morning brought sunshine streaming through her window, and the sounds of a city waking so different from the dusty quiet of Rhyolite. Lily dressed carefully in her one good dress, then joined the other boarders for breakfast. There were 5 other women at the table, all working ladies as Mrs. Harrington had described a school teacher, 2 shop clerks, a seamstress, and a young woman who worked as a typist at a law office. They welcomed Lily warmly, offering advice about the city and potential employment opportunities. The dry goods store on J Street is hiring, the seamstress, Miss Paulson, told her. Mr. Waterman is strict but fair, and he pays on time. The ladies' academy where I teach may need an assistant, added Miss Green, the schoolteacher. Nothing fancy, just helping with the younger girls, but it's respectable work. By the time Owen arrived promptly at 10, Lily had a list of possible positions to inquire about and a clearer sense of her new surroundings. He looked different somehow in the Sacramento sunshine, more relaxed, less watchful than he had been in Rhyolite. His clothes were the same simple quality garments, but he carried himself with an ease she hadn't fully noticed before. "Good morning," he greeted her, eyes warming at the sight of her waiting in the parlor. "Did you sleep well?" "Surprisingly so," she admitted. "And everyone has been so kind. Mrs. Harrington, the other boarders, they've already given me leads on possible positions." "Excellent," he said, genuinely pleased. "I have a carriage waiting. I thought perhaps a tour of the city first, then lunch, and afterward we could visit some of these potential employers." The day that followed was one of the happiest of Lily's life. Owen showed her the impressive state capitol with its magnificent dome, the elegant homes along M Street, the bustling commercial district, and the riverfront where steamboats arrived laden with goods. He knew the city well, pointing out landmarks and sharing historical anecdotes that brought the places to life. They lunched at a charming restaurant where the proprietor greeted Owen by name, suggesting he was a regular customer during his visits to Sacramento. The food was simple but delicious, and Lily found herself relaxing completely in Owen's company, laughing at his dry observations about city life. "You seem different here," she remarked as they enjoyed coffee after their meal. "More at home somehow." He considered this. "I suppose I am. I come to Sacramento often enough to have developed a fondness for it, and there are no ghosts here, not mine anyway. Unlike Rhyolite. Yes," he hesitated, then added, "I never feel entirely easy in mining towns. Too many memories, perhaps. Too many men like Wilcox." After lunch, true to his word, Owen accompanied her to inquire about positions. At the dry goods store, Mr. Waterman was indeed hiring but seemed to have reservations about Lily's lack of references. At the milliner's shop, the position had already been filled. By late afternoon, Lily was trying to maintain her optimism despite the growing realization that finding work might be more challenging than she'd anticipated. Their final stop was the ladies' academy Miss Green had mentioned. The headmistress, Mrs. Porter, was a formidable woman with sharp eyes behind steel-rimmed spectacles, but she listened attentively as Lily explained her situation or a version of it, omitting the details about the saloon and focusing instead on her education and desire to start anew in Sacramento. "Miss Green speaks highly of your character," Mrs. Porter said, glancing at Owen, who waited respectfully by the door. "And while I typically require more formal references, I find myself in urgent need of an assistant. Miss Adams left us quite suddenly to be married. She named a modest salary. The position includes room and board, should you prefer it to your current lodgings. It was less money than Lily had hoped for, but the security of room and board was appealing. And the academy, with its neat classrooms and orderly young pupils, offered a respectability she hadn't dared hope for so quickly. "I would be delighted to accept," she said, unable to keep the relief from her voice. "Excellent. You may start Monday next. That will give you time to settle your affairs." Mrs. Porter stood, signaling the end of the interview. "Miss Green will acquaint you with your duties when you arrive." Outside, Lily could barely contain her excitement. "I can't believe it. A position already, and such a respectable one." Owen's smile was warm with genuine pleasure for her. "You deserve it." Mrs. Porter clearly recognized your worth immediately. "I owe this all to you," Lily said impulsively. "Without your help, I'd still be trapped in that saloon." A shadow crossed his face. "You owe me nothing, Lily. You would have found your way eventually. I just helped speed the journey." They walked in comfortable silence for a while, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the streets. Lily was acutely aware of Owen beside her, of the growing feelings she couldn't deny. But there was still so much unsaid between them, so many questions about the future. "Will you stay in Sacramento now that I'm settled?" she asked finally. "Or do your business interests take you elsewhere?" "I'll be here at least through next week," he replied. "My meeting with the banker is tomorrow, and there are other matters to attend to." He glanced at her. "But yes, I'll need to return to Sonora eventually. The mind doesn't run itself, unfortunately." Disappointment settled in her chest, though she'd known this moment would come. Their paths had crossed by chance or perhaps providence, but they led in different directions. As if reading her thoughts, Owen stopped walking, turning to face her. "Lily, there's something I need to tell you, something I should have explained earlier." The seriousness in his tone alarmed her. "What is it?" He gestured to a small park nearby. "Perhaps we should sit." Heart racing, Lily allowed him to guide her to a bench beneath a spreading oak tree. Whatever he needed to say, it clearly wasn't simple. Owen removed his hat, setting it beside him on the bench, a gesture that emphasized the importance of the moment. "When I told you I had personal business in Sacramento, that wasn't the whole truth." He took a deep breath. "I own land here, a ranch about 20 miles east of the city. I've owned it for nearly 2 years but haven't lived there yet. Been too busy with the mine, I suppose." Lily blinked in surprise. This was not what she had expected. "A ranch? But you never mentioned." "I know, and I apologize for the omission." He looked troubled. "The thing is, Lily, I didn't want to complicate matters when you were already facing so many decisions, and I didn't want you to think." "Think what?" He met her eyes directly. "That I helped you with an expectation of something in return, that paying your debt was some kind of transaction." Understanding dawned. "You thought I might believe you expected me to come to your ranch, to be with you?" "Yes." His expression was painfully earnest. "I wanted you to make your choices freely, without feeling obligated to me in any way." The care he had taken with her independence, with her dignity, touched Lily deeply. How different he was from Wilcox, from all the men who had looked at her as something to be used and discarded. "Owen," she said softly, "I never thought that of you, not for a moment." Relief washed over his features. "I'm glad. Because the truth is, Lily, I've come to care for you a great deal, more than I expected, more than might be wise given our circumstances." Her heart leapt at his words even as caution held her back. "Our circumstances." We've known each other such a short time, and the circumstances of our meeting were unusual. His hands, those strong, capable hands, twisted slightly in his lap, a rare sign of nervousness from this normally composed man. "I don't want gratitude confused with deeper feelings." "Is that what you think this is?" Lily asked, finding courage she didn't know she possessed. "Gratitude," he looked at her searchingly. "Isn't it, at least in part?" "Yes," she admitted. "I am grateful to you, Owen. I will always be grateful for what you did. But what I feel—" She hesitated, then continued with determination. "What I feel when I'm with you isn't gratitude. It's something I've never felt before, something I didn't believe existed outside of novels." The hope that kindled in his eyes gave her courage to continue. "In the saloon, I was hardly living, just existing, counting days. But since I met you, since you walked me out of there, I've felt truly alive again. And it's not because you rescued me. It's because of who you are, your kindness, your integrity, the way you look at the world." She took a deep breath. "I'm falling in love with you, Owen Locke, and it terrifies me because I don't know what happens next." For a moment he was silent, and Lily feared she had said too much, revealed too much of her heart. Then, slowly, he reached out and took her hand in his. "What happens next," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "is whatever we choose, together." His fingers tightened gently around hers. "Because I'm falling in love with you too," Lily rose. "Have been since I first saw you in that saloon, looking like the bravest, saddest angel I'd ever seen." Joy welled up inside her, so intense it was almost painful. "But the ranch, you're mine, and I've just accepted a position at the academy." "We have time," he said simply. "Time to know each other better, time for you to be sure of your own mind, independent of anything I did for you." "I'm not going anywhere, Lily. Not really. Sonora isn't so far, and I can arrange my affairs to be in Sacramento more often." The wisdom of this approach was undeniable. They did need time to build something real, something based on more than rescue and gratitude. "And after?" she asked, hardly daring to hope. "After we've had this time." His smile, slow and full of promise, warmed her to her core. "After, if you'll have me, I'd like to court you properly, and perhaps someday ask you a certain question about sharing that ranch with me." It was not a proposal, not yet, but a promise of possibility, of a future they might build together. And for now, that was enough. "I'd like that," Lily said, her own smile mirroring his. "Very much." They sat together as the sun began to set, hands entwined, speaking of plans and hopes and dreams. The path ahead was not certain, but for the first time in her life, Lily faced the future without fear, only anticipation of the joy it might bring. 4 months passed in a blur of new experiences and deepening emotions. Lily thrived at the Ladies' Academy, quickly earning Mrs. Porter's approval and the affection of her young pupils. The work was challenging but rewarding, giving her a sense of purpose she had never known in Rhyolite. True to his word, Owen divided his time between his mine in Sonora and Sacramento, spending as many days as possible in the city. Each visit brought them closer, as they discovered the joy of simply being together, walking through the city parks, attending concerts, sharing quiet dinners where they talked for hours about everything and nothing. Between visits, Owen's letters arrived regularly, thoughtful, sometimes humorous accounts of his days that Lily treasured. She wrote back just as faithfully, sharing her growing confidence in her work, her observations of city life, and, increasingly, her deepening feelings for him. By mutual agreement, they took things slowly. Owen never presumed, never pressed, always treating Lily with a respect that made her previous life in the saloon seem like a distant nightmare. And with each passing week, she became more certain that what she felt for him was real, not gratitude, not the aftermath of rescue, but genuine, abiding love. In October, with autumn painting the valley in rich golds and reds, Owen invited Lily to visit his ranch for the first time. Mrs. Porter, now something of a mentor to Lily, gave her blessing for a Sunday excursion, though not without a pointed reminder about propriety. Mrs. Harrington will accompany us as chaperone, Lily assured her, amused but touched by the older woman's concern. The ranch, when they arrived after an hour's journey by carriage, took Lily's breath away. Set in a verdant valley with mountains visible in the distance, the main house was a handsome two-story structure of native stone and timber. A wide porch wrapped around it, and neat outbuildings dotted the property. It wasn't large or grand, but it had a solid, welcoming presence that spoke of permanence and care. "It's beautiful," Lily said as Owen helped her down from the carriage. Mrs. Harrington followed, making appreciative noises as she surveyed the property. "It needs work," Owen replied, but she could hear the pride in his voice. "The previous owner let things slide before he sold to me, but the bones are good." He showed them around the house with its simple, well-crafted furniture and large windows that filled the rooms with light. The small orchard of apple and pear trees. The barn where several fine horses regarded them with mild interest. The creek that ran clear and cold along the eastern boundary. "The land is good for cattle," he explained as they walked. "Better than my father's place ever was, and there's enough water year-round, even in drought years." "You've thought of everything," Lily observed. He glanced at her, something soft and vulnerable in his expression. "I've been planning for a long time, waiting for the right moment, the right person." The implication of his words warmed her, even as Mrs. Harrington tactfully drifted ahead, pretending great interest in a flowering shrub to give them a moment of privacy. "And have you found them?" Lily asked quietly. "The right moment and the right person." Owen took her hand, his touch gentle but sure. "I believe I have, but the moment isn't quite yet. Soon, though." She understood what he meant. 4 months was still a short time to make decisions that would last a lifetime. But his patience, his respect for her need to be certain, only confirmed what she already knew in her heart. As they returned to the city that evening, Lily found herself picturing a future on that ranch morning spent watching the sunrise from the wide porch, evenings by the hearth with Owen beside her, perhaps children someday running through the orchard or learning to ride in the meadow. It was a vision of happiness so complete, it almost frightened her. After years of hardship and months of servitude, did she dare believe such joy could be hers? November brought colder weather and a flurry of activity at the academy as the girls prepared for end-of-term examinations. Lily found herself working longer hours, sometimes missing Owen's visits entirely due to her responsibilities. He never complained, supporting her dedication to her pupils and sending small gifts, books, flowers, once a beautiful woolen shawl to remind her of his affection. In early December, a letter arrived that was different from his others. The handwriting seemed hurried, the tone more formal than usual. "My dearest Lily, business requires me to return to Sonora immediately. A situation has arisen at the mine that demands my personal attention. I regret that I must postpone my planned visit this week. I had hoped to speak with you in person about a matter of great importance to me, but circumstances now make that impossible. Therefore, I must put my question to you in this imperfect medium, though it feels wholly inadequate for the depth of my feelings. Lily Rose, these past months have been the happiest of my life. You have brought light and joy to days that once seemed merely dutiful. I find myself thinking constantly of you, your smile, your courage, your gentle heart, and I can no longer imagine a future that doesn't include you by my side. I love you, Lily. I believe I began loving you that first night in Rhyolite, though I scarcely understood it then. And if you feel as I do, if you can imagine a life shared between us, I ask you now to consider becoming my wife. I know this is sudden, and I would understand completely if you need time to consider. The ranch awaits us whenever you are ready, whether that is next month or next year. I ask only for the honor of calling you mine, and the privilege of devoting my life to your happiness. I will return to Sacramento as soon as my business allows, hopefully within the fortnight. Until then, please know that you are in my every thought. With all my love and hope. Owen. Lily read the letter 3 times, her hands trembling, tears blurring the carefully written words. A proposal so unexpected in its timing, yet so perfectly right in every other way. She had known for weeks, perhaps months, what her answer would be when this moment came. Her heart had decided long ago, even as her mind counseled patience. Taking out pen and paper, she began her reply, the words flowing easily now that the moment had arrived. My dearest Owen, your letter found me in the midst of examination preparations, but all thoughts of schoolwork fled the moment I read your words. How strange that mere ink on paper can bring such joy, such certainty, such peace. I need no time to consider, Owen. My answer, my heart's own truth, is yes. 1,000 times yes. I will marry you with gratitude and gladness whenever and wherever you wish. You speak of the honor of calling me yours, but the greater honor is mine. You saw me at my lowest moment and treated me with dignity when others saw only opportunity. You offered freedom without condition when others sought to cage me. You gave me choices when others would have decided my fate for me. But beyond all you have done, it is who you are that has captured my heart, your quiet strength, your unwavering integrity, your gentle spirit. I love you, Owen Locke, and I cannot imagine a greater happiness than becoming your wife and sharing all the days to come. Return to me when you can. I will be waiting, with my answer ready on my lips as it is here on this page. All my love, Lily. She sealed the letter immediately, before doubt or convention could make her temper her words. This was no time for maidenly hesitation or false modesty. Owen deserved her whole heart, offered freely and without reservation. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of anticipation and practical preparations. Lily gave notice at the academy, explaining her circumstances to Mrs. Porter, who offered congratulations tinged with regret at losing her. He is a good man, your Mr. Locke, the headmistress said. I've seen how he looks at you with respect as well as affection. That bodes well for a marriage. Mrs. Harrington was equally supportive, though she extracted a promise from Lily to write regularly after she left for the ranch. You've become like family to us all, the landlady said, surprising Lily with a rare embrace. We shall miss you terribly, but your happiness comes first. When Owen finally returned, arriving unannounced at the boarding house one snowy evening in mid-December, Lily flew into his arms the moment Mrs. Harrington ushered him into the parlor. Yes, she said simply, before he could speak. My answer is yes. He held her close, his strong arms enfolding her with a tenderness that made her heart ache with joy. When he finally drew back to look at her, his eyes were suspiciously bright. I have your letter, he said, pulling it from his pocket worn already from multiple readings. I've carried it with me every day, but hearing you say it. He shook his head, seemingly at a loss for words. I love you, Lily said, giving him the words he needed. And I want nothing more than to be your wife. He kissed her then, a gentle kiss that still held the promise of deeper passion. When they parted, both were smiling like children on Christmas morning. When? He asked simply. As soon as possible, Lily replied without hesitation. Unless you need more time to prepare the ranch is ready, Owen said. Has been for months, just waiting for its mistress. They were married 2 weeks later in a small ceremony at Sacramento's First Presbyterian Church. Mrs. Porter and Mrs. Harrington attended, along with several of the boarders who had become Lily's friends. Owen's side held fewer guests, just his mine foreman and a banker from the city, who had apparently been advising him for years. Lily wore a simple gown of ivory silk, a gift from Mrs. Porter and the other teachers at the academy. Owen, in a new black suit, looked so handsome it made her heart skip when he turned to watch her walk down the aisle. The ceremony was brief but meaningful, both bride and groom speaking their vows in clear, unwavering voices. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Owen's kiss was tender yet full of promise, sealing their commitment before God and their small circle of witnesses. A wedding luncheon followed at one of Sacramento's finest restaurants, the same establishment where Owen had first taken Lily months earlier. There was cake and champagne and much good-natured teasing from their friends, but through it all, Lily was aware only of Owen beside her husband now, the words still new and wonderful in her mind. As they prepared to depart for the ranch, Mrs. Harrington pressed a small package into Lily's hands. "A little something from all of us at the boarding house," she said, her usual briskness softened by emotion. "For your new home." Inside was a beautiful hand-stitched quilt, each square contributed by one of the women who had shared Lily's life these past months. In the center, embroidered in elegant script, were the words, "Love begins at home." Tears filled Lily's eyes as she embraced each of the women who had become her friends. "I'll treasure it always," she promised. The journey to the ranch was filled with a quiet joy, both of them aware of the significance of this moment, the first step into their shared life. Snow dusted the landscape, transforming the familiar valley into something magical and new. As the carriage turned onto the lane leading to the house, Lily gasped in delight. Owen had prepared a surprise. The house and surrounding trees were decorated with lanterns and ribbon, creating a welcoming glow against the twilight sky. On the porch stood an older couple, the caretakers, Owen explained, who had helped ready everything for their arrival. "Welcome home, Mrs. Locke," he said softly as he helped her from the carriage. The words sent a thrill through her. Home. After so long without one, the concept seemed almost too precious to grasp. Yet here it was, solid and real, waiting for them to fill it with life and love. The caretakers, Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, greeted them warmly before tactfully withdrawing to their own cottage on the property, leaving the newlyweds to their privacy. Inside, the house was warm and inviting, a fire crackling in the hearth, candles lit on the dining table where a simple but elegant supper awaited them. "You thought of everything," Lily said, touched by the care Owen had taken to make their homecoming special. "I wanted it to be perfect for you," he replied, helping her remove her coat. "This is our beginning, Lily, the first page of our story together." That night, as snow fell softly outside their bedroom window, they came together as husband and wife with a tenderness and passion that transcended physical desire. Owen's touch was gentle, reverent, his patience infinite as he guided Lily through the initial awkwardness to a pleasure she had never imagined possible. Afterward, lying in his arms, Lily felt a sense of completeness, of rightness that went beyond the physical joining. This was what she had been seeking all her life without knowing it, not just passion or companionship, but true partnership. A love that respected and uplifted, that cherished without possessing. "What are you thinking?" Owen asked softly, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "That I never believed such happiness was possible," she answered honestly. "Especially not for someone like me." He propped himself up on one elbow to look at her, his expression serious. "What do you mean, someone like you?" She hesitated, old shame rising despite her efforts to suppress it. "Someone who worked in a saloon, who was tarnished, Lily." His voice was firm but infinitely gentle. "You were never tarnished, never. You did what you had to do to survive, and you did it with dignity and strength. If anything, that makes you more precious, not less." His words washed over her like cleansing rain, dissolving the last remnants of shame that had clung to her despite everything. In Owen's eyes and his love, she found final redemption from a past that had never been her fault. "I love you," she whispered, pulling him close again. "More than I have words to say." "Then don't say it," he murmured against her lips. "Show me." And she did, with a newfound confidence born of absolute trust and acceptance. The days and weeks that followed were a time of discovery and adjustment as they learned the rhythms of shared life. Owen taught Lily about the ranch operations, the cattle that would arrive in spring, the crop rotations for the small fields, the care of the orchard that would provide fruit in summer. Lily, in turn, transformed the house with small touches that made it truly their home. Curtains she sewed herself, arrangements of dried flowers and pine boughs for the winter months, the precious quilt from her friends displayed prominently in their bedroom. They established traditions, reading aloud to each other in the evenings, Sunday rides across the property, stargazing from the porch on clear nights. They argued occasionally, as all couples do, but always found their way back to harmony, their commitment to each other stronger than any temporary disagreement. Spring brought new beginnings. The ranch came alive with calving season, the first cattle arriving as promised. Lily discovered she had a natural affinity for the garden, coaxing vegetables and flowers from the rich valley soil. And with the warming days came another discovery, one that filled both of them with quiet joy. "Owen," Lily said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, "I have something to tell you." He turned to her, a question in his eyes. "We're going to have a baby," she said simply, "in late autumn." For a moment, he seemed frozen, his expression one of disbelief. Then, with a whoop of joy that startled the horses in the nearby corral, he lifted her from her chair and spun her around, heedless of the startled look from Mr. Wilson, who was crossing the yard. "A baby," he said, setting her gently back on her feet. "Our baby." The wonder in his voice matched what Lily felt in her own heart. Another miracle, another blessing she had never dared hope for during those dark days in Rhyolite. As summer ripened into fall, Lily's body changed, growing round with the new life within. Owen treated her with a protective tenderness that might have been stifling had it not been so obviously born of love. He insisted on hiring help for the house, despite Lily's protests, that she was perfectly capable of managing. And he arranged for a midwife from Sacramento to stay with them for the final month before the birth. Their son, William James Locke, was born on a crisp November day, exactly 1 year after Owen had proposed by letter. He had his father's strong features and his mother's determined spirit, announcing his arrival with lusty cries that made the midwife laugh approvingly. "A healthy boy with good lungs," she declared, placing the swaddled infant in Lily's arms. "He'll be strong like his father." Owen, allowed into the room after the initial cleaning and examination, approached the bed with an expression of awe that brought tears to Lily's eyes. "He's perfect," he whispered, gently touching his son's tiny hand. "Just like his mother." As Lily looked at her husband and son, the family she had created from the ashes of her old life, she felt a sense of completion, of having come full circle. From the trapped, desperate woman in a Rhyolite saloon to this moment of pure joy, it seemed almost too miraculous to believe. Yet it was real. All of it, Owen's love, their home, their child, was gloriously, wonderfully real. The years that followed brought more children: a daughter, Sarah Eleanor, born 2 years after William, and another son, Robert Thomas, 3 years after that. The ranch prospered under Owen's careful management, expanding gradually as neighboring properties became available. Lily's garden became famous in the area for its abundance and beauty, and she began teaching local children to read and write in a small schoolroom Owen built for her on the property. They made occasional trips to Rhyolite, where Mrs. Benson still ran her hotel and greeted them like family. The town had changed, some businesses gone, others sprung up in their place, but the Silver Dollar Saloon remained, though under new ownership after Jasper Wilcox died of a stroke in 1882. "You ever regret it?" Owen asked once as they drove past the saloon on one such visit. Leaving with a stranger that night, taking such a risk. Lily looked at him, her husband of 7 years now, the father of her children, the man who had transformed her life with a single act of kindness. "Never," she said simply. "Not for a single moment," and it was true. The journey from that night to this had not always been easy, but every step had led her here to a life filled with love, purpose, and joy. A life beyond anything she could have imagined when Owen Locke first walked into that saloon and set her free. As they drove back toward the station, the setting sun bathed the desert in golden light, transforming the harsh landscape into something beautiful and sacred. Lily leaned against Owen's shoulder, grateful beyond words for the man who had paid her debt and walked her out forever, not just from the saloon, but from a life of limitation into one of boundless possibility. "Take me home," she said softly, and he did.